there! In this video, I would like to introduce you to the idea of a table join and show you how to execute one in ArcMap. This is a really useful technique because it helps you get data that you're interested in, that you need for analysis, that you need to work with into the GIS software package. So what the situation here is that you've probably noticed that when you go to a shapefile, and I just have the US states loaded in here for the sake of example, you go to Open Attribute Table, and you've got all of this attribute information. You may have more, you may have less, depending on which file you've got. This one happens to have a bunch of census data already stuck into it, but you may have less information, but importantly, you may not have the information that you need. You can have lots of information, but it may not be the column that you need. Of course, you can map all sorts of things and use all sorts of things in your GIS analysis, and you're not constrained to what is in the attribute table with an existing shapefile. You can add your own data to it, and you do this very effectively through a table join. So let's say that we're working with some other data that we want to bring into ArcMap, so maybe we can do a simple map of it or do more sophisticated analysis, do whatever, but we want to attach it to this attribute table. We can reuse the geometry, therefore. I don't have to go and create new geometry every time I need a new column or bring in some new data. I can just reuse this geometry, attach new columns to this geometry. So that's exactly what I want to do. Let's say that I just have a spreadsheet. Let's say that I just have an Excel file, which is what I've got here. Let's say that what I'm interested in is aliens. I'm interested in UFO sightings. So I happen to have a spreadsheet of UFO sightings. So this is an Excel spreadsheet, although I noticed when I sat down here to work on this particular computer that I don't have Microsoft Office installed. But that's okay, because what I did is I downloaded OpenOffice, which is of course free, and OpenOffice will read Excel files, so that's going to let us check out what we've got here. So let me just open up that spreadsheet so you can see what I've got. UFO sightings, here it is. So very simple spreadsheet here. I've got one column which is at the heading of location, and it's got the states as well as the District of Columbia, and I think it's got Puerto Rico in there. So it's got different locations in the United States, and then this is supposed to be the number of UFO sightings, and I suppose some given year. Why UFO sightings? I don't know. This was just something that some students came up with, just kind of to have some fun with when we were learning about table joins and getting our own data. So I've just kind of kept this file around ever since then. I think it was one of the first semesters that I taught, just to use as an example for table joins. I don't know what year this is supposed to be. I don't know what the source of this is or if it's legitimate in any way. It's just something to have fun with here. So, but UFO sightings, let's try to get this information in. This is information we might like to have in map form or be able to analyze in ArcGIS. So what's important to note here is that I have this column called location, and it's got all of the names of the places in it. And then when I go over here to the attribute table, you're going to find that I have a column right here called state name. I can sort ascending here. I've got a column called state name that has the name of each one of those states in it. And importantly, very importantly, it has the same name in that column in the attribute table as it has in the spreadsheet. Get back to the spreadsheet here. There's my name, the attribute table. Here is the spreadsheet. So notice that I'm not trying to connect the name of the state over here in the attribute table to the abbreviation of the state over here. I've got the state abbreviation over here. But what I've got to have in order to tell the computer to do what I want it to do is I've got to have two columns that are identical. They've got to be exactly the same. The computer's not going to be able to judge anything else. It's going to look for exact matches. So misspellings, differences in capitalization, those things will matter. ArcMaps can be very particular about doing this. It's not important for them to have the same name. See, this column is named state_name over here in the attribute table. And this one's called location over here in the Excel sheet. But that's okay. That'll work. I can tell it that they're in different columns with different names. There are a few things that I do when I prep a spreadsheet for introduction into ArcMap. Some of these things are kind of legacy things that have been going on. ArcMap has been getting better, that I still do, just because they were things you had to do in earlier versions of ArcMap. But I can still find that it can be rather finicky about getting the table to join. Everything has to be perfect. So there's still a few things that I do. I don't like to have any kind of formatting in the spreadsheet. Of course, in a spreadsheet you can have all different colors and sizes and so forth. I don't. I take all of that out when I'm trying to do a table join, because I'm just interested in pulling in the data. I'm not going to be able to pull in formatting anyway to ArcMap. I can just pull in the data anyway. So I get rid of all the formatting. Oftentimes I even go over here to the type of cell that it is. Here's number format in OpenOffice. And go ahead and tell it that, hey, what we're working with here are numbers. That may seem a little strange because no, the names of the locations are not actually numbers. But I get rid of all formatting. I get just as plain and as straight as it can possibly be to make sure there's not any kind of funky business. It does not like spaces. Spaces up here in the name of the headings of the columns, I've noticed that as late as 10.2, I haven't tried this on 10.3 yet, but my guess is that it's probably the same, that ArcMap in general does not like spaces. So if you have spaces up here in the heading columns, sometimes that will throw you off. Replace the spaces with underscores. Just a couple of things I've noticed that go wrong. This is a very simple concept, this matching, but yes, there can be problems getting it to match up sometimes. ArcMap sometimes won't do it for you, and what I found is primarily it's something that's small and finicky. That's the reason why the table join isn't executing, like a space in the column name or something like that. And that's why we're having problems, and not something more fundamental that maybe a student doesn't actually understand. Just something small and finicky. So those are what you have to look out for. By the way, I also do save down to XLS files, not .xlsx files. There's .xlsx, which is the newer format. This is the earlier format, .xls, and that's the format that I'm going to use in order to bring this in. Oh, and I also close it. I close it. I'm going to close out of OpenOffice entirely. I don't like to have the spreadsheet open when I'm trying to bring it into ArcMap. So I go ahead and close it out so it's fresh. You used to have to actually import Dbf files and convert the Excel sheets to Dbf files, but in later versions of ArcMap, including this one, ArcMap helps you out. Imagine that, with allowing you to import Excel files. So I'm going to do exactly that now. I'm going to bring the Excel sheet into ArcMap, and I believe it's sitting on the desktop. There it is. Now when I click Add, it does bring up this option for Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. If you're familiar with Microsoft Excel documents, I think they're technically called like a workbook, because an Excel document can have more than one spreadsheet in it. And so, but ArcMap doesn't like that. It's going to ask you which one of those specific sheets do you want to bring in. So if you've got more than one sheet in an Excel document, okay, but when you're coming in here to ArcMap, it's going to ask you for the one that you want to add. That's why it asked me 1, 2, and 3 here. My data set is so simple here that it doesn't have anything in these other two sheets, and all it is sheet 1. That's where the data is. So I'm going to say Add. So here it is. You can see that that sheet has now been added to my table of contents. My table of contents does look a little bit different now. You're probably used to being over here. It swapped it when I added that sheet. So over here, and this is the List by Drawing Order button, and you can tell that when I am over here on this particular button, the Excel sheet doesn't show up, and that's because the Excel sheet isn't being drawn. There's nothing in the Excel sheet to draw, but there is this other option to list everything in your table of contents by source. In other words, by where it is on your computer or another network drive or wherever. So you can see that I have I have data coming in from 2 different folders, and so that Excel spreadsheet is in the project here, but it's not something that can be drawn, but it does show up over here with the layers when you're sorting the layers in your table of contents by the source. Well, anyway, okay, so let's keep going here. There's not much more to it. I'm going to right-click on states. That was a right-click to bring up my menu. And then I'm going to go to Join and Relates, and I'm just going to click Join. And there's just a very simple menu to walk through right here. What would you like to join to this layer? Join attributes from a table. That's what I want to do. I've got some attributes in that table, that Microsoft Excel sheet, so that looks pretty good. There are another option here, but this is a attribute join. That's exactly what we want to do. Choose the field in this layer that the join will be based on. Okay, this is the state's shapefile. That's the one that I clicked on. So I've got to tell it which field in the attribute table is the one that's going to match a field in the Excel sheet. So when I drop down, it gives me all of the fields that are in my spreadsheet. And if you remember, it was state name that matched the name in the spreadsheet. So I want to join this based on state name. Yes, I would like to join it to sheet 1 of the Excel sheet. And then it says choose the field in the table to base this join on, and it is location. It's already in there for me. That's the one that contains the state names. Now I do have a couple of options here, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and click here. And that just means if there are more things in my Excel sheet than there are in my states file, then just throw out the record that doesn't have a match in the state shapefile. And that is the case with this data set that we have here, because in the states shapefile it doesn't have the District of Columbia, because it's not a state. Neither is Puerto Rico, I think, was on that list. So there were a couple of items on the spreadsheet that are not in the state's shapefile, so no problem, just ignore it. That's what I want to do. And then I'm going to click Validate Join here, and it will go through and check to be sure that the records matched just fine. So I'm just going to say OK. And it executes that join. When I right-click over here on the attribute table now, okay, so I'm going to scroll over in the attribute table. So scrolling all the way over to the end. Now I see location. It went ahead and brought in the location field. So there are all the states, and there are the sightings. So if I were studying UFOs and this was some data that I needed, well, here are the number of sightings per state. So, if I were to just show you, okay, so here's Maine right here, and it is matched up with the Maine that's over here in state name. So now I can do whatever I want to with it. If I were just going to be symbolizing this. Oh, I got Maine selected. Let me deselect Maine and go down over here to Properties and Symbology. And if I'm going to be doing some kind of choropleth map now, well, here we go. I can even select sightings now. And then, of course, I don't ever like to see that color. And that's not necessarily a good color scheme. We'll play with it. I have to do a whole lot more to make this a pretty map. But at least you can see right there that I can go in, I can symbolize it. If I need to do queries based on attribute, if I need to do anything, I can now do it with the sightings. There is one thing that I would like to point out, though, that sometimes tricks people up. And it is the case that this join is not permanent. Okay, this join, that sheet, that Excel sheet is being joined to this shapefiles attribute table just for the purposes of this ArcMap project. Now, if you're going through and you're learning ArcMap, you're probably already getting familiar with the idea that the data is different from the project file. You save the project file, but you've got to take all of your data with you, and so forth and so forth. So this join is just based on this project. If I were to open up a completely new ArcMap document, I would not see, and then put in the states layer, the states shapefile, I would not see these two columns, location and sightings, in it, because I didn't technically add the location and sightings columns to this attribute table. I just joined them for the purposes of this project only. So sometimes that messes students up if they don't realize that, if they think that this data is now permanently attached. What you would want to do is you'd want to save your ArcMap project, you've got to have the shapefile with you. You've also got to have the Excel sheet with you. And that way, the computer, the ArcMap project is going to look for both of those. Bring in the siting shapefile and also going to bring in the Excel sheet. And then join them back up when you open up this particular project. But if you go to another project and just put in states, it is not there. There are good reasons for that. That seems counterintuitive to students in the beginning, but there are good reasons to that that we will talk about later. But that is the way that it is. I'll just point out that if you really want it to be permanently attached, let me show you how to do that. Because you might. If you're doing a small project and you've got all of the attributes just the way that you want them, you might want to permanently attach that data to the shapefile. And if you do want to do that, then what you do is go to Data, Export Data. So Export Data, and I'm going to put it on the desktop, and I'll say, I'm going to call this States UFO, so we know there's a difference. Make it a shapefile right there. And export. I'll say no, don't add it, because what I'm going to do is open up a completely fresh project, new blank map, just to show it to you. Save changes to Untitled. No. I'm going to go and say add data, and now what I'm going to add are the states. This is the state shapefile that I had in originally. I say add. I'm going to open the attribute table, scroll all the way across. Look, no UFO sightings information. Those are not there because this is a completely new project. Did not save that project either. So that join isn't there. I'd have to bring in the Excel sheet and redo the join. But now I'm going to show you the desktop states UFO. This is the one that I specifically exported after the join. Now, open attribute table, and there we go. There's the location and the sightings information. It looked like something funny went on with my geometry right there. What happened to Louisiana? I might have accidentally not gotten Louisiana in there. Let's see. Louisiana is not in here. Huh. Let's look at the states file. I mean, obviously it's over here. That probably gives a fantastic example. Let me open the attribute table over here. Go over here to state name. Louisiana. I might not have had a match, so it's there. Oh, well, just for the sake of looking, let's look for Louisiana. There is Louisiana in my data set, and yet I appear to not have a match for Louisiana. Let me see if I can find out why that was quickly. Oh, I think that's it. Look, there is a space after the name Louisiana. I'm going to delete that. I think that I had a strange number anyway when it validated that join, but I'll bet just about anything that was the cause of that problem. So great little thing to watch out for. I'm going to save that document out, and I'm going to retry that join. So I'm going to add in, there it is without Louisiana. I didn't get the join. And then I'm going to add back in the census data, the states. And now I'm going to redo that join. Oh, let me add in the Excel sheet first. So I'm going to right-click, go to Join. I would like to join state name to sheet 1 based on location. There is the sightings data. Let's look for Louisiana here. We got it that time. Let's go over and take a look. Yep, there's the Louisiana sightings information. So that space mattered. When I said that they have to be exactly the same, they have to be exactly the same. And so just visual inspection, yeah, I didn't notice that there was a space there, but there was in the data set. So be careful. That kind of thing will mess you up. But anyway, the principle is very easy. You just have to watch out for little finicky things like that. All right, well, that is an attribute table join. I hope that you put it to good use to analyze all of your neat data with.